Hey everyone, it's George from the Race podcast, and today we have the voice of Spartan Arabia, Christopher Hutchison. Now listen guys, if you've done your Spartan race, there's no better feeling than the start line when Chris says, Spartan, what is your profession? The experience is absolutely epic and memorable, isn't it? And Chris guys is focusing on creating memorable and impactful experience. Now we start off this episode by discussing his fitness journey and his journey into the Spartan race in the Middle East. We discuss the early stages of events going back to 2016 right up to the last one in Corfacan. And as you know guys, there are three events coming up in April. On the 8th of April, there's Spartan Trail, which is under the Spartan Arabia umbrella. Now, there's also Hurricane Heat on the 8th of April, and if you have kids, there is an event on the 15th of April as well, but this time it is for a longer distance. And in this episode guys, Chris clearly explained what is it that you can expect at these events. We also discussed Trifecta and Hata that is going to take place in later part of this year. Now listen guys, you gotta sign up for these events. All of the registration links are in the show notes below. But guys listen, the most surprising answer was when I asked Chris what has been his most memorable experience in organizing these events, and the answer was surprising and extremely beautiful. So definitely check out that part. And Chris also discussed some of the challenges they faced, particularly during the COVID shutdown. And the feeling I got from talking to Chris is that these challenges has only made him and the Spartan brand get better. And guys, Chris also offered some sound advice for other race directors, event organizers, and the importance of open communication, which is absolutely critical. Now listen guys, Hyrox is going to be a huge deal, and Chris is the main guy behind getting Hyrox in Dubai. And Chris shared his experience competing at an event in London and also shared potential dates, most likely in the later part of this year, so definitely check it out. And we also discussed some of the pro athletes, and we also discussed the second generation of athletes that he has seen during his tenure towards the later part of the episode. We also discussed his passion for music. Now I know that some of you guys know what kind of music Chris is into, but he also told me that he has hands-on experience playing a musical instrument, and to be honest guys, the instrument that he's playing is pretty cool, so definitely check it out. And guys listen, because Chris is the voice of Spartan Arabia, what I did was I asked some of the brand ambassadors and some of our frequent listeners to write to us to ask few questions, and some of them were really good ones, so definitely check it out. Now listen guys, support this channel, give it a 5-star rating, and please make sure that you sign up for these events. The registration link is in the show notes below. Now if you do want to contact Chris, all of his details, Spartan Arabia details, Spartan Trail details, and Hyrox Middle East details are in the show notes below. And if you do have any feedback or suggestion, mention them in the comments below, or also you can drop us an email at theracepodcast@gmail.com, so check it out. So firstly Chris, thank you so very much for taking your time and doing this. Really appreciate you talking to me about your knowledge and information, particularly about obstacle course race. And I have to say thank you from the bottom of my heart for bringing obstacle course race in the MENA region. You literally are the voice of Spartan Race and even the voice of OCR in the MENA region. Now before we kickstart this episode, just wanted to check base on, how has your day been so far, and can you also provide us an update on the state of obstacle course race, that is Spartan Arabia, also hybrid fitness and fitness goal in general in 2023?
Oof, a lot to go there, but first off, I just want to take a moment. Thank you very much. Really appreciate getting me on here, George. It's incredible to be on a podcast and be able to share a little bit of my expertise and experience in OCR and just, mass participation events as a whole. It's been an incredible journey thus far in the Middle East and North Africa over the last, it's almost 5 years. It'll be 5 years on April 18th since I made the full-time commitment coming out here and joining the Spartan team. And it's been one heck of an adventure.
So was that going back to 2017 or 2018, Chris?
So 2016 was actually my first experience in the Middle East, particularly in Dubai. I was working with, I had my start at a DJ company back in Canada.
Okay.
I used to DJ and MC corporate events, weddings, the bars, the parties, everything in general. And I came across an event being hosted at the local motocross park, and it was a Spartan race. And a buddy of mine was emceeing the event, and he gave me a call. He's like, "Hey man, you gotta go check this out. This is right up your alley." And so I went and checked out the Spartan Race. It was 2015 in Calgary, Alberta, and it was incredible. Actually, that was 2014 because I didn't do it that year. The following year, I got the contract and hosted my first Spartan Race as an MC. It was incredible. I ran that race on the second day. The partial concussion. It was incredible, and just having the opportunity. Later on that year, I got the invites to come out and be the MC for the Dubai event, and it was just it was out of this world for me. I hadn't been across the pond, so to speak, so I hadn't really experienced this kind of lifestyle and just the culture, and it was magical. That was the February event, 2016, the second event, and we've had 38 events in the Middle East since that one.
38 events. That's absolutely massive and quite a lot, to be honest, because I believe you've done events in Bahrain, Oman, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and other places as well, right?
Indeed. We've actually, as of last year, we were able to finally go to Qatar and complete the circuit in terms of GCC countries.
Uh-huh.
And the expansion continues to grow. I mean, as much as we have an opportunity to, we always want to be able to explore other areas within the MENA region. Egypt, Jordan, those two names have been popping up a lot in terms of interest and opportunity, and places obviously that we haven't been. But being able to revisit the GCC countries is always, I wouldn't say a main priority, but definitely the priority, right? We want to continue to go back to places where we've been able to launch and engage the local sporting communities, encourage people to get up, get active, get off the couch, get out on the course.
Absolutely, and that is one of the visions, Joe DC as well, to get people off the couch. Now, before we get into the nitty-gritties of the obstacle course races Hyrox event that you are going to be planning later on in this year, for our listeners, can you tell us about your fitness journey? Because I believe you're a coach as well, and you're an SGX Level 2 coach or Certified Level 3 fitness trainer. So talk to us about your fitness journey. How did you get involved into the fitness journey?
Indeed. So it's kind of funny because when I was younger, I've always been relatively active. And when I was younger, I was 12 years old, and I lost vision in my left eye, and it really it deterred my abilities, or at least what I thought at the time, my abilities to compete in sport. I suffered a number of concussions playing ice hockey locally, and just my days in sport were numbered, so to speak. So I kind of took a step back from sport in high school and then kind of going into college, and it just wasn't a part of my environment as much anymore, although I was still a sports enthusiast and a big sports fan. But I had never heard of obstacle course racing or any of these sort of events that had taken place. And when I was introduced to Spartan, it became an interest, not just from an MC standpoint and a DJ standpoint, but from the sport and competition standpoint. Competitive nature is not something that just goes away. If you're a competitive individual, you've got that for life, whether it's in your work habits, it's in your personal lifestyle. It's just something that is a part of who you are. And that was essentially what it is me. And so as I got more involved with Spartan on a full-time basis, predominantly when I came out here in 2018, I was being introduced to athletes. I was kind of, you're a product of your environment. And so that was becoming more and more apparent in my lifestyles, that I was going to be around sports figures. I was going to be around the sport itself, opportunities to be able to expand in terms of the brand awareness and being able to get more individuals engaged into the Spartan community required somebody to kind of step into that fitness level. So I just personally went out and decided to get my PT level 3 back in late 2018, early 2019. And then obviously being a personal trainer, it only made sense to get my SGX level 1 and 2. From there, I was able to host our first ever workshop, or at least invite our instructor out, Sam at the time, who was working in Spartan training, to come out and hosted a workshop. We had 40 coaches certified that weekend back in 2019, which was, I thought it was kind of a landmark in terms of being able to really build up the awareness of, SGX and proprietary coaching for OCR. And we want to continue to kind of push that out again. And I'll continue to just be a part of that. Again, sports and recreation and overall fitness and wellness has just become a staple in my life. It's really it's amazing when you start to steer in that direction of fitness, what to come around in terms of your personal and professional goals.
Absolutely. And what I'm really liking, Chris, is, you're trying to explain it, the experience that you've got from the fitness industry, how that can be incorporated in a personal life as well, be it, let's say, business, be it, someone struggling with a personal life as well. Absolutely brilliant stuff. And I'm not sure if you follow UFC. Oh, there's one of the fighters called Michael Bisping. He has a problem with one eye, and despite all that thing, he has turned out to be one of the favorite champions of UFC as well. So absolutely brilliant stuff. Now, Chris, take us back to the earlier stages of Spartan Race. When was the very first time, I know you touched base on this. What was your initial reaction? What was the environment like?
So my first Spartan Race in the Middle East again was 2016, and this was a relatively historic event for a number of reasons. The first event in the Middle East had happened the prior November in 2015. I was not a part of this event, but I've heard the stories of legend old. The 2015 event was hosted in Jebel Ali Racecourse, where we're hosting our trail in a couple weeks' time. But there was a sandstorm that had blown in, and it completely covered the entire course. There was wind that was just tearing up the entire festival area. You couldn't see much past 10 feet in front of you. It was absolute chaos for a Spartan event. And this happens anywhere in the globe when you have weather warnings and conditions that may create a scenario like that. Obviously, safety is paramount, so it's about being able to take all these things into consideration. In any case, they had a successful event. There was a photo somewhere that I had seen at the time. Reebok was the sponsor of the event, and there was these 6 letters for Reebok that were standing up, and individually only the 2 letters OK were standing at the end of the day, and with a beautiful backdrop of Dubai Marina and the towers. It was just it was a really a beautiful photo, but it really summarized how things went. It was okay. The following event was massive. It was spectacular in a lot of different ways. It was the second largest event we've ever hosted. Almost 4,000 participants in attendance. But overall grand attendance, it was our largest because we had the honor of having Sheikh Hamdan run with his team, and we had the King of Dubai himself come and spectate at the sport and walk around, and he was encouraging the kids race. It was just, for me, it was I'd never seen a king in person. I'd never shaken the hands of the prince before. It was a very
iconic
royal experience. Iconic would be a great word for it. And that was my introduction to the Middle East, which I wouldn't say is stereotypical by any means, but it was very different experience. And it was just cool to see that kind of compassion in terms of leadership being at a sporting event. You wouldn't see the Prime Minister of Canada or the one of the governors of a province show up at a local Spartan event, but sure enough, I mean, it goes and speaks in volumes in terms of the ideology around fitness and health and well-being in Dubai.
Absolutely, and particularly during the whole COVID era, I think Dubai as a city definitely stood out in the sense, when the world was focusing on restricting people and going outside, Dubai as a city was focusing on making, the health so much better, and we did have the Dubai Fitness Challenge that year as well. Now, Chris, based on the very first obstacle course race that happened in Jebel Ali, and the recent one which I believe was in Corfacon, what are the changes that you've observed over these years?
There's a lot of different things that you could kind of chime in on there. I mean, the wow factor is always going to be there. Spartan Race is always going to challenge individuals. I think those that have been around the block, so to speak, and have been running our races season after season, looking for a different way to challenge themselves. This is where we try to, get them to kind of climb that ladder in terms of going from the open category, getting into age group, perhaps running elite, really challenging themselves to prepare pre-events in terms of training and potentially modification of the diet, and just getting ready to compete at that level. I think that's one of the growing passions in terms of the sport and those that want to keep coming around. But the one thing that is very similar is always going to be the newbies on course and getting that experience.
Yeah.
I think what is changed overall, it would be how corporate I think before, the corporate wellness agenda was a little difficult to summarize, and the ideas weren't always there. Where post-pandemic, it seems that I think obviously because of the understanding of health and wellness just being at the forefront of any business, let alone personal lives, I think that that's being drawn into consideration when it comes to, hey, what do we do as a corporate initiative? Do we go out and have a brunch on a Saturday, or maybe do we go and collectively get together and try and conquer Spartan Race? And I think the latter has really drawn an appeal to those that are looking to participate. It's funny, they say that if you take the CEOs, the top 100 CEOs in the globe, and you were to look at the ones that go golfing or do really leisurely activity, and you'd look at the ones that push for endurance and push for challenging events, physically challenging events, the ones that push for that physical challenge and finding ways to challenge themselves outperform every single golfing CEO. And that mentality will bleed through right to the lowest individual in the labor force of that company and organization. And that's why we encourage from a top-down perspective when it comes to corporate to come out and pull your staff together, pull your team together, be the leader that you demonstrate in the office, out on the course, and show the team that they can pull together and do something significant.
That is absolutely brilliant, the fact that you're mentioning about corporate companies post the COVID-19 era focusing more on health and fitness. I think it is absolutely brilliant, and it's great to know that Dubai and UAE in particular are definitely taking the lead. Now, based on your conversation, let's say, Chris, with other event organizers let's say, in Canada and other parts of the world, do you think that, corporates from other parts of the world, are they following a similar pursuit, let's say, of Dubai, or is Dubai leading the race? Wherein, you're getting companies involved in, let's say, endurance or hiking.
It's hard to say from a global perspective. From a regional perspective, we can say that we've seen an uptick. In it, I think what's important to recognize is the economic factors that tie into it. There are businesses that suffered tragically during the pandemic, even going out of the pandemic into the post-pandemic. And we're no stranger to that. We, as an organization, had to shut doors down for, Spartan globally, 400 events, gone. We had to shut down in the Middle East and North Africa for an entire 18 months. So a business generating zero revenue for 18 months, you can imagine the difficulties, right? So kind of coming out of that pandemic scenario, some organizations are still kind of feeling the hurt. Others are shifting and understanding that the overall cost of putting on an initiative or putting together a team to get involved in an initiative is going to bring a surplus to the overall execution and performance of that team. So it is an investment as opposed to just a petty cash buyout in terms of the team and pulling them together.
One thing, which you touched base earlier on was to get a lot of newcomers into the sports. And what I've been doing is, I've been interviewing athletes as well. And the very first thing that they said that after they did the first Spartan race, they were like, that's it, I'm not going to do it anymore. But most of them have turned out to be hardcore obstacle course race enthusiasts. Some of them are Spartan brand ambassadors as well. I'm pretty sure you know of Simon Pepper. He was one of the guys who actually was a participant at the Jebel Ali race course in 2015. And he was like, that's it, I'm never going to do obstacle course race anymore. And as you know right now, he's, a phenomenal athlete. I think he's an ideal brand ambassador for the sport as well. So thank you once again, for incorporating obstacle course race, endurance, and all these things, events into our life. Now, keeping all these things in mind, and particularly as we're heading towards summer, we also have few events coming up in the month of April. So can you provide an overview to our listeners about the list of events coming up in April, such as Spartan Trail, which is under the Spartan Arabia brand as well, the Hurricane Heat, and quite a lot of other. So can you tell our listeners a bit more about the events in the month of April?
Absolutely. So, it's been a bit of a shift in terms of what we're looking to accomplish for Ramadan. Last year, Ramadan, we had one of our largest events post-pandemic, and it happened in such a short time frame. It was a request through Dubai Sports Council to be able to contribute into the NAS night events, and we were happy to take that challenge on. and the turnout was grand. It was our first ever night event. So going into 2023's Ramadan, just adopted Spartan Trail from a previous licensee, and so looking to introduce that in sometime before the summer was kicking in. This seemed like the best opportunity, and it is going to be an interesting challenge for sure. 10K trail for this first outgoing adventure in Jebel Ali Racecourse. Trail, obviously, it's a little different of a dynamic in terms of what would be traditional with Spartan, which is the OCR, obstacle course racing. There are people that literally have reached out time and time again saying, where are the obstacles? And that's understood, but not every challenge is going to be the same challenge. And one of the benefits that people may not think about when it comes to running a trail, a Spartan trail in particular, is that when you look at an obstacle course race, as many obstacles as there are out on a race course, the obstacles make up 20% of what is the actual course. What are you doing the other 80% of the time? You're running. And if your run game is a bit off, if you're struggling to really hit those PBs in terms of your training, that can affect your overall performance. Not to mention, running itself and cardio is probably one of the best forms of exercise that's easy to do, and it costs practically nothing outside of maybe buying a set of runners. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of inexpensive value that you can bring to a Spartan Trail, and value gain out of running a trail, learning how to run proper form, learning how to navigate specific terrains without getting kind of lost in the sauce that is, how do I get over this obstacle? How do I climb this rope? How do I lift this Atlas ball properly? Those things will come in time, of course, when we have our OCR events, but the trail gives 100% running focus for the event to really challenge Spartans. And then, of course, the atmosphere that is a Spartan, camaraderie that is running with your team, that is meeting some of the ambassadors, learning from some of the SGX coaches in terms of, again, run form, technique, different tricks to the trade, breathing, so on and so forth. Now, to shift the gear the other direction, an event that is familiar in the region and it's actually growing quite substantially in popularity is the Hurricane Race. We've officially crossed, registration-wise, we've officially crossed more hurricane heaters for this hurricane heat than any that we've hosted in the Middle East thus far, which is absolutely astounding to see, more so because it's happening during Ramadan. We've already doubled the number of hurricane heaters that we had the year before. So I think that it's a specific individual that really wants to go out and do a hurricane heat, knowing what you're getting involved in. I think the scare factor pops in for those that aren't quite familiar with hurricane heat. And again, to summarize, hurricane heat is a 4-hour, in this case, 4-hour can go up to 24 hours around the globe, but a 4-hour endurance event where you get positioned with a number of individuals and you are essentially run through a boot camp style exercise and challenge over a 4-hour period. You're going to meet strangers, you're going to become friends, you're going to be partnered up with a number of individuals doing different tasks that are going to challenge you spiritually, emotionally, the whole works. And the goal to kind of show you that no matter what you're doing, and if there are other individuals that you're doing it with, you're all working towards one common goal. And there's so much more that kind of gets taken away from it. It's an incredible adventure, the hurricane heat, and the cryptea that we have out here in the Middle East are unique and tremendously experienced in terms of being the individuals that had hosted the Agogi back last year, just prior to Worlds. It was quite a remarkable feat that those guys had gone through in hosting it, and of course the individuals that had taken part in it, some of which might even be at this hurricane heat on April 8th.
Absolutely. I've spoken to some of them, and I'm pretty much sure they've already registered for the hurricane heat. And our listeners should know that what Chris is talking about is a bogey, which happened in 2022. And I believe that was for 60 hours, isn't it? In the middle of the San Diego.
Wild experience. Agogi it's a very unique concept. It's done once every year somewhere around the world. And the theme behind the Agogi is kind of based a little bit on the tradition of Spartan Agogi. For those that aren't familiar, Spartan Agogi was when a boy of Spartan descent was brought into manhood by going through the Agogi, which is essentially him going out into the wilderness, having to fend for himself, feed himself, clothe himself, do whatever you needed to do for a specific period of time, and then come back into manhood. And it was quite a resurrection, so to speak, for these individuals. And so that tradition had been brought in from a Spartan race standpoint, and we host these agogis somewhere around the world. And what we do is we try and tap in to the local traditional values and customs to teach individuals about that specific area. And it's really incredible. The individuals that were part of the Agogi in 2022 learned so much about the Bedouin culture of the Middle East, specifically, obviously in the UAE here, and learned some incredible lessons throughout the course of the Desert Challenge.
Absolutely, 100%. And I think it sets a good example for kids as well. Now, talking about kids, I think there's an event planned on the 15th of this month as well, right?
Absolutely.
April.
The kids race. And I love kids races. We have this will be our third standalone kids race that we have hosted in the UAE, first time in Dubai. Excited to be going finally to the Dubai Expo. I have been clawing at the bit to try and see if we could, piece something together from an OCR standpoint at the Expo, and happy to say that it's going to be happening on the 15th for the kids. Future consideration, you never know for other events from an OCR standpoint, but this one is going to be spectacular. Kids 4 to 14 are able to come out and participate. It's a Ramadan event that also ties into a charitable donation that's going to be made on behalf of Spartan and Islamic Affairs. Amazing stuff. It's so good to be a part of a charitable event in a time where charity is profound and surrounding us.
And if I'm not mistaken, Chris, one of the Spartan Kids event was in Al Ain Zoo as well, right?
Indeed, the last, I believe, I'm sorry, that was the first kids race was in Al Ain Zoo, and prior or after that, I believe, was Al Gazelle. Those being two of our familiar territories, so to speak, when it comes to the races we've hosted in Abu Dhabi. But incredible, 1,000 plus kids that came out for both the events. We're anticipating similar numbers in terms of attendance for the kids race during Expo. All the kids kind of on their little spring break as of right now, so enjoying the festivities that is Ramadan, and then going to be able to celebrate on the 15th by crushing a rather decent course. It's going to be a little longer in terms of distance than the traditional 800, 1600, and 3200 meters. Wanted to give the kids a little bit more to explore at the Expo.
And I think the age limit is 4 years to 14 years old, right?
Correct. And the 14-year-olds are in an interesting scenario, because that 14-year-old can now officially run Spartan adult races. Okay. Obviously with the consent of mom and dad, but once they step into the 5K or more adult courses, that's it. We put the childish games aside. There's no more kids races for them. But I think it's a fantastic changeover that Spartan has done globally to give some of these 14-year-olders that are, I mean, in all fairness, that are bigger than me in some cases, a chance to run the 5K and 10K.
Absolutely. And Chris, you just mentioned about mom and dad and kids being at this event. Now, lately, what we have seen is the second generation of athletes competing at such events as well. Some of the names that I can think of is, Simon Pepper and his daughter. There is Rajiv, who completed the Agogi. He often brings his kids for participating in the kids event. So from an event organizer's point of view, how does it feel when you see the second generation of athletes who pretty soon will be competing at, the adult category as well? How does it feel from your point of view to see that change?
Well, having been around as long as I have and seeing that and literally watching these kids grow up, I mean, you mentioned Simon Pepper and obviously Charlotte Pepper, who was an ambassador, one of our youngest ambassadors at one point, had come on board. She had gone from my first time seeing her in a kids race to winning the Spartan Beast at the World Championships as an 18-year-older. She is tremendous in terms of athletic potential, and I'm super excited to see what the future is going to look like for her. But it has been a remarkable journey in seeing some of these kids transcend from a kids race into the older kids race, if not into the adult races. And it really is about kind of continuing to push that initiative of keeping our younger generation active and engaged, because it is a battle against, so to speak, sedentary lifestyle when it comes to keeping kids active and engaged. Don't get me wrong, video games are a lot of fun. I was living on them myself at a younger age. But the idea of getting kids out and enjoying the nature and enjoying physical activity, these are things that are compulsory in order to living a healthy lifestyle.
Absolutely, 100% could not agree more. And towards the later part of the episode, I do have a question in the future of fitness, and we'll definitely touch base on that, considering the fact that our lives is in mobile world, laptops and everything. Now, going back to Spartan Race, Chris, in the month of November, there's also another massive event, which is the Trifecta event in Hutner. What can the athletes expect from this event?
An absolutely epic trifecta. This has been a long time coming. Our last event in Hutta, apologies, that was our biggest event to date in the history of Spartan in the Middle East. We had 4,600 plus people come out and participate that weekend, and that was a one-day event. Absolutely spectacular, and the growth that we have seen in terms of what Hutta is, and for those who aren't familiar with Hutta, it is one of the most incredible destinations in the UAE to experience. I was actually there yesterday supporting a friend of mine that was running 4x4 at 48, a David Goggins position. If you don't know it, look it up. And I had ran the last run with him and a friend, and to take in what has been done over the last 5 years is astounding. I remember the first race we had in Hutta was the Middle East Championships, 2017. It was the first time I had been to Hutta, and the mountainous scenery was breathtaking, but there was zero development. There was a big concrete building that hadn't been developed. It was just a shell of a building. And to think 6 years later how much they have built around it and created is incredible. And that's going to be one aspect of just a number of different aspects at this 2-day 6-race event that we're going to be hosting on the 25th and the 26th of November.
And on that event, I believe you have a Spartan Trail as well, right? If I'm not mistaken.
Correct. We'll have Spartan Kids, the Sprint, Super, and Beast, making it a full trifecta weekend. We'll have our Hurricane Heat, and we'll have our Spartan Trail. As of right now, looking at the 10K and consideration for the 21K.
Excellent. And in the near future, Chris, are there possibilities to have a Spartan Trail trifecta, probably in the year 2023? Because I believe the last one is the 50K trail, right?
Indeed, the Trail Ultra, definitely potential for it. The market, keeping in mind, market in the Middle East is a little bit, I would say, stagnant, just a smaller demographic overall if you were to compare us to traditional areas where they're hosting events like this. The USA has got a population that's 30 times in terms of attendees, 30 times in size. So being able to host that event it's going to take a little bit of working and engineering to pull together the actual masses to participate. But I think there's value, again, because we have Spartan communities that are always looking for more. That obstacle challenge is always going to be the main factor when it comes to our Spartans. But again, that challenge of being able to learn how to better your training through trail running is just that, an excellent challenge to get you better.
And Chris, from an athlete's point of view, one of the most iconic or the most important thing for us is the atmosphere. After the race is over, when we get our medals. But the most iconic moment is when we're standing at the front line. And when we hear you talk about Spartan, what is your profession, and we all cheer, it makes for a really unique and memorable moment. But from your point of view, from an organizer's point of view, and you being the host and the MC at these events, so far, what has been the most memorable event with Spartan Arabia, and what event stands out for you personally?
Memorable event. That's, every event that we've hosted has its own unique wins and, I wouldn't say losses, but definitely challenges. Events are interesting and unique in that accord where, like, it's the show must go on. Right? There are things that can pop up that can create, again, just looking at adverse weather conditions being a situation that we'd have to address. But I don't think it's any sort of particular one event or one thing at an event that had happened before. What really kind of flips the switch in the position that I hold when I'm at the event is seeing individuals who really thought they couldn't
Yeah.
complete it and recognizing that they could. When that happens, again, when you win, when you think you're going to lose, it's a different kind of win, and that I get to see firsthand. That's a touching experience for me. Having individuals come to me and saying, "Hey, man, thank you so much. This changed my life, and you were part of it." That's an uplifting thing for me to hear, and it's not often that people get to hear those kinds of things said to them at their job. And I'm very grateful to know that like the experiences that we provide are doing that for individuals that are coming to our events. It's a unique privilege, I guess you could say, that we have as Spartan staff to do that, to challenge themselves further, to push themselves further, to create that kind of value in their own mindset. Because once that happens, things change. I mean, you can go back to living the same sedentary lifestyle, and it could be a one-off, but it'll still itch you, it'll still poke you, it'll still prod you to be a better person, knowing that you have that potential. When you just let potential sit, it gets ugly.
Absolutely, and I can only imagine the kind of smile that you have on your face when you see someone who were doubting their abilities and finally able to cross the finish line. It definitely brings a different sense of smile, and it also acts as a motivational factor as well to arrange these events in the near future as well. So, absolutely beautifully said. But what I want to find out, Chris, is from a race director and organizer's point of view and from your end, what were some of the biggest challenges that you faced, particularly in putting up an obstacle course race and event, keeping in mind the supply chain problem, the COVID-19 problem, transportation issues? What are some of the challenges that you guys face and how do you overcome it? Because from an athlete's point of view, we always see you positive. We always see you giving high five to everyone, cheering people up. So we aren't aware of what are the challenges that you guys will be facing.
So behind the scenes, yes. So it gets pretty tricky to kind of pinpoint some of the particulars. The reality is that at the end of the day, we're looking to put on an event to the best of our capabilities and with the resources that we have at our availability, so to speak. When it comes to our athletes, we really want to make sure that the sport is as professional, that sportsmanship is being taken into high consideration. So when we have individuals that may or may not know how to do a burpee, obviously the burpee is not a concern anymore, simply because the burpee has been removed as a penalty. It's now a penalty loop. But when that was an issue, right, and individuals learning how to properly execute a burpee, did they do it right? Did they do it wrong? Leaving that responsibility on marshals, who are individuals that volunteer their time to be a part of this event and to support, it can be a little challenging, right? These individuals are doing the best that they can, and I mean, at the end of the day, everybody's human, and there may be a mistake here and there that's made, and so being able to find a win for everybody in certain circumstances can be a bit challenging. When it comes to the open category, when it comes to the events that we're hosting, it's just about being able to get people in on time, get them to the start line on time, get them out there on time. So external factors that we can't really control can contribute to delays in the event, whether it's registration, whether it's the start line, and things like that. And we hope that our Spartans are understanding to a degree. At the end of the day, we want to put smiles on faces and keep those smiles there, so individuals are coming back and wanting to do it again and again and again to continue on that tradition of challenging themselves.
Absolutely. And lately, what I've been noticing in UAE in particular, and even in Oman, there are quite a lot of training groups, which are focused primarily on obstacle course race. You have Desert Shield Fitness, which is the first obstacle course race community. You have Chai Kak in Oman. You have OCR Empire. We had OCR Nation. Now, for these entities or for these training groups, what message do you have to put across to them?
I continue to do what you do. At the end of the day, these organizations, these groups, these communities have built out for a reason, for purpose. Whether it's to make sure that everyone's happy, whether it's to make sure that people are standing together, whether it's to make sure that there's a cup of chai at the end for everybody involved, whether it's the run enthusiasts, whoever it may be. The reason these individuals came together is for a common goal, whether it's to conquer obstacle course racing or to do other things that tie into that agenda. It's about the community, building it out and using these opportunities to educate people on fitness. OCR is just one element, beautiful element when it comes to fitness because it covers a variety of different things. But at the end of the day, It's about people continuously staying active. And when you surround yourself with an environment that is conducive to staying active, you start to reap the benefits. And just doing that in a good social standing and a social group is a huge win. And these are all communities that support it and will continue to do so. And I thank all of these individuals that have been pulling these teams together and been coming out to our events time and time again. You guys have been a staple in the community. You've been a large part of the reason I've been able to do other things like activations and work tours and really getting people involved. And I appreciate it tremendously to each of those groups and the many more groups that are going to start to come and grow out of this OCR experience.
Absolutely, 100%. We definitely thank these communities as well. Now, talking about fitness, Chris, you're also trying to bring Hyrox, and it might be the first Hyrox event in the Middle East. So once again, thank you so much for doing that. Now, before we get into what are the challenges that you're facing on that, or what was the decision-making process, can you give a very brief overview of what is Hyrox, and how does it essentially differ from obstacle course race, such as, let's say, Spartan Race, Tough Mudder, or Desert Warrior Challenge, or even DECA events?
Indeed. So Hyrox is an incredible event. So backstory to Hyrox. Hyrox was created in 2017 in Germany. It is an indoor mass participation event where an individual will register, kind of going through that same little motion that would be any other Spartan event or, mass participation event. But you step to the start line and 3, 2, 1, you are off. You're going to run a kilometer and then you're going to do an exercise, finishing off a set of reps for the exercise and then back out for another kilometer and then back in for another exercise and then other sets of reps. That totaling to a culmination of 8 kilometers and 8 different exercise stations or zones. It's all for time. It's completely standardized. So whether you do it in Dubai, whether you do it in New York, you do it in Tokyo, it is the exact same event that you would be competing with everywhere around the globe. So you have an opportunity to set world records in terms of age groups, in terms of the elite. It's absolutely incredible. The production that goes into these events from a setup standpoint is just phenomenal. It's typically held indoors at a convention center exhibition hall, massive spacing, upwards of 10,000 square meters, which is literally 2 convention centers at the World Trade Center. And we're poised to get an event going. I can't quite drop a date yet, but I can say Q3 into Q4 is looking tremendously promising.
That's really good in the fact that, this can be done indoors. And particularly for people in UAE, where you're restricted to do things, outdoor events such as Hyrox, will definitely help quite a lot. But what I wanted to find out, Chris, is that you have done your Hyrox event as well, right?
I did. I did my first Hyrox in London. I pushed the limit. I did the pro. So there's different divisions, as it's said in Hyrox. We have the open division and we have the pro division. You can run individually. You can run as a tandem or in pairs, either male-male, male-female, or female-female. And you can run in a relay of 4 individuals. Now, the difference between single, doubles, and relay is that a single individual is running the whole thing themselves. The doubles, individuals will run the 8 kilometers collectively together, but they'll split the exercises in whatever way they wish. And then for the relay, individuals will do 2 kilometers and 2 exercises, essentially splitting the 8 kilometers and 8 exercises over the 4 individuals. Now, the pro division in the singles is what I had stepped to, which is just a heavier weight and heavier resistance in terms of the different exercises of the 8 different stations. Finished it in 104 minutes. I am proud of that number. Had I had trained for this event, I might have been able to shave off some time. But it was definitely an exciting experience for me. The energy, much the same as it is with Spartan event, it's electric. And because it's indoors and the lights and the screens and this much more confined area where Spartan is a bunch of racers all over kilometers of outdoor area, this particular event showcased in this 10,000 square meter high intensity zone. It's something else. Very excited for this year.
Absolutely, and the production that they have, I think, is absolutely phenomenal, particularly the banners. It kind of reminds me of Physical 100, which is a popular Netflix TV show. I'm not sure if you watched that. But what our listeners should do is, definitely follow Hyrox ME, which is the Instagram handle. But I wanted to find out, Chris, can you describe the decision-making process and the brainstorming session of bringing Hyrox to the Middle East? Because what I think is in the next coming years, hybrid fitness events such as Hyrox or Deca is definitely going to boost a lot of people getting into the sports.
Well, I mean, to paint the picture, the idea of continuously expanding the brands that were Spartan and or Tough Mudder after the inherent swallowing up of Tough Mudder by Spartan, these things, and growing these brands, whether it was Deca, all of this, Trail, these things were well on their way until the great pause of 2020. Yeah. And when that had happened, there was obviously a different transitioning, a licensee taking over specific products that were no longer available. And at that point in time, although consideration for Hyrox had been in, it was a question of whether or not it was the right time. Coming out of the pandemic, 18 months of zero revenue, it becomes a question of whether or not we're making the right decision on adopting Hyrox as a license. Also not knowing maybe people weren't comfortable going out into the public, but we chose to take the challenge and sign on the opportunity, and we did so. And it was just it was a question of when we were going to be able to launch that first event. Intentions were last year. Unfortunately, there was some elements that kind of prevented us being able to move forward at the time that we did. But the beautiful part of Hyrox leading up to the event that never was the what are called physical fitness tests, or PFTs. We do a PFT tour, which is essentially just an activation that we would host at specific gyms. And the engagement and the excitement and the energy at these smaller events was phenomenal. There was hundreds of individuals over the course of, I think, about 6 weeks that had come out and taken the challenge of doing a PFT. And for those that aren't familiar, a PFT is essentially 6 exercises that you will do back to back, and you're doing it all for time. Now, you'll get a silver, gold, or bronze patch, and that patch will correlate to your time. If you get a bronze patch, then it would be a recommendation on maybe trying the open category or running teams, maybe doubles, to just get the experience in at the main event. If you hit silver, which is my personal best at this point in time, then it was recommended to take on the open challenge, maybe doubles, or if you want to experience pro, giving pro a shot. And if it was that you had gotten gold in terms of time on the patch, you were definitely ready from a athletic standpoint to take the challenge doing pro, either in the doubles or singles category. So a great way to really understand where you fit in from an event standpoint without being overwhelmed with the idea that you might be getting in over your head. Because that was something that I experienced when I went out for the event in London when we had the signing last year. I didn't really know what I was getting into. I knew I was aware of the actual challenge that it was and the weights, but I hadn't experienced it before. So when I was talking to individuals that had, and I mentioned I was going into pro, and they had asked, have you run a Hyrox before? I had mentioned no, and they were kind of turning their head like, really? You're just jumping into pro like that? But I love a challenge, and so I got through it. But the feeling of scratching my head and wondering, did I make the right decision? That became a little bit of a tickle in the back of my mind. And I wouldn't doubt I might have gone a little quicker if some people hadn't suggested otherwise. But it was a great experience, and that's what it's about. It's about experiencing it with Hyrox. The challenge of getting out and completing the actual event is one thing, but now it becomes much more, because everything that happens at a Hyrox event is something that you can do in your local gym. Every single exercise is doable in your local gym. So training for events becomes much more hands-on, where we have to get creative when it comes to training for Spartan Race. That's the beauty of SGX, is we're there to teach you how to become an athlete when it comes to OCR. There are different methodologies and different modalities that you want to take advantage of. And SGX coaches are able to teach you that. With Hyrox, we have level 1 and level 2 coaches that are going to be able to teach you just as you would learn from a personal trainer in terms of execution of these specific exercises that are had in events. So there's always opportunity, but it's really inside the gym where you're going to start to build the foundations of the building blocks for Hyrox.
And that's the beauty of, having indoor events as well. And George Crew, who's also one of the co-hosts of the Race Peace podcast, I think he's going in for the World Championship, which I believe is in Manchester later on in this year, along with his fiancée. And some of the guys on Spirit Level, I think they are partaking in their relay event as well.
Spirit Level, just to make note, Spirit Level and George Crew and the gang, tremendous athletic potential, these guys. I believe they did in Amsterdam come second in their relay. They are forced to be reckoned with. George is going to be at the Worlds in Manchester, from what I understand. Spirit Level being our first affiliate gym, or affiliate partner, so to speak, in Dubai, along with Desert Shield out in Abu Dhabi being our first Abu Dhabi. These guys have been paving the way in terms of really building out the experience and introducing people to Hyrox leading up to the events. And we're very excited to have George and the gang coming out to this first one. I know these guys they've been waiting for a little longer than we all want to get out and tackle the 8K and 8 exercises.
Absolutely, and these guys are, a proper obstacle course race enthusiast as well, which leads me to my next question. Well, let's say for athletes or, enthusiasts who are only into obstacle course race, Chris, what advice would you like to give them and why should they give it a try?
Experience. At the end of the day, the same reason that individuals wanted to try a Spartan race should be the same reason individuals want to try a Hyrox. It's for the experience. There shouldn't be anything else outside of looking to experience something that should motivate an individual to do it. Because that experience itself will dictate what you're looking to get out of it. If you go into something with an expectation, or if you go into something with a little bit of doubt, concern, fear, those things will hinder the actual experience. But if you go into something just looking to experience it, then you can really take it all in. The sights, the sounds, the smells, the feels, everything about it becomes much more almost tangible. And that's what it's about when it comes to any event, when it comes to anything you do, sports or otherwise. If you go into it just looking forward to the experience with zero expectation, everything you're looking for will come through that experience.
Absolutely, and this experience is kind of like a healthy drug, which makes you want to come back for these events quite often, and it's so critical that, race directors and event organizers do a phenomenal job at this. Now, with that keep in mind, what is the message do you have for, let's say, other race directors who are conducting events, particularly in the Middle East?
I think the biggest message that could be said to any individual that's working in events, particularly in sporting events, to race directors, to festival managers, to CEOs of these organizations, is to really take into consideration what the community is looking for and how you can best cater to the community. Now, in all fairness, and I'm on this side of the fence, so I'm well aware of it, these events, particularly in the Middle East, can be staggering in costs. And we can't necessarily say, well, the price has gone up because the economy's prices have gone up, so we're going to front that bill back onto the shopper. We're not going to be doing that because it just doesn't make sense. So it's about finding what makes sense in terms of value for that consumer and giving them, again, bringing it back to the experience that they're looking for. And when they get that experience, it's a surefire thing that they're going to come back wanting to get it again and again, because it's about a feel-good sensation, whether it's watching their kids cross that finish line, whether it's crossing the finish line themselves for the first time in a decade, doing anything that is physically exerting, whether it's just the fact that they lost 100 pounds, and I know this personally, an individual in Calgary, Alberta had done it, losing all of the weight through the process of training for a Spartan race or a Hyrox, and then completing that event. There's a reason that due date that is an event, whether it's Spartan or Hyrox, there's a reason why it becomes so significant in the lives of individuals participating in it. Because the lead up to it is where the foundation is built, where the training takes place, where the camaraderie is built, all of these things. So, but it doesn't happen if there isn't an open communication in terms of ears open by the race director and the staff of that event, and voices being heard through the individual consumer themselves.
Absolutely, and I think one message which I like to give particularly to other race directors is if you look at Chris on course, for some odd reason you always have the same enthusiasm, you're always positive, you're always giving high five to other people, and from a participant's point of view, it definitely gives a lot of boost. It does motivate us, so thank you once again, for doing the positive things. One thing which you touch base upon is, the increasing prices and the lifestyle, particularly in UAE. Now, as you know, the geopolitical situation that is going on between US and Russia, China and Taiwan, the inflation is off to the roof. Generally speaking, the overall economy is not doing good. Now, keeping in mind obstacle course race in Hyrox, how is it that the business is able to sustain, particularly in the United Arab region?
So our business model has always been one that's supported through our partnerships, and much to the degree on any event that exists, whether in the Middle East, North Africa, or the globe abroad. Sponsorships and partnerships are integral in the success of an event, simply because the costs of these events, they can't be levied out through to an individual that's looking to participate. It just wouldn't be something that would generate an interest. So having our partnerships and building out on our partnerships and creating a vision for these partnerships in terms of longevity is what's been able to sustain our market and our capability of hosting these events. We wouldn't be where we are today without them. So, I mean, hats off to the literally hundreds of partners and sponsors that we have been working in tandem with throughout these events, pushing on, again, 40 events. It's remarkable to see the interest and the engagement and the support, whether it's financially, whether it's value in kind, whether it's just them coming out and showing that they're interested and want to get people out and active. That contributing to the overall goal of fitness is phenomenal.
Absolutely, and you touched base upon partnership. Now, before the COVID-19 era, Joe Cena, he was trying to get into the world of NFTs, and because of COVID-19, they had to delay this process of Unbreakable Pass, which is essentially an NFT where, the pass holder gets access to unlimited races, be it, let's say, Spartan Race, Trail Race, even paddleboarding events. Now, what are your thoughts on the Unbreakable Pass so far?
I think it's a phenomenal pass. And fun fact, when the pass was launched last year, our region had the most number of individuals that had purchased the patch in the entire globe. So I think it goes to speak not just towards the fact that the brand awareness we've created has done tremendously well, but it goes to speak just how dedicated a large number of our participants in this region are to the brand that is Spartan. How much more they want to see us hosting trail, hosting paddleboarding, hosting Highlander, hosting all the OCRs, hosting all of these different events, because Spartan itself is no longer just OCR. It is a lifestyle brand. It is everything and anything that is active, engaging, compelling, and challenging that you can possibly ask for.
I absolutely 100% agree. And, it's great that you mentioned that a lot of people, particularly from Dubai and UAE, were the ones, who contributed in buying the Unbreakable Pass. And lately, Chris, I'm not sure if you know that Dubai is actually the home place for cryptocurrencies, blockchain, and NFTs. Now, from a business point of view, what are your thoughts on accepting, let's say, cryptocurrency as form of payment? Maybe even for, let's say, buying t-shirts or even paying for registration fees. What are your thoughts on that?
So from a personal standpoint, I am an advocate of the idea of involving blockchain, involving crypto in the overall purchasing power of the consumer when it comes to our events. There's obviously there's a concern for it for a multitude of reasons, and some of which I'd be out of my league to kind of speak upon. But at the end of the day, that risk that the organization itself has to be willing to adopt in order to entertain the opportunity for consumers. It is something that we are indeed considering, simply because I believe it is the future of what would be transactional agreements for a lot more than just a Spartan race. So we're staying with it. I wouldn't say we're ahead of the curve, and I wouldn't say we're falling scarcely behind. But it is one of those things where risk factors need to be taken into consideration before anything is really executed upon. But like you said, NFTs and blockchain and crypto, we're in the backyard of it all. We're in a great place to be able to adopt this option and integrate it into the overall transactions that take place.
Absolutely. And while we are talking about technology, right now the buzzword that is going on in the technology field, and particularly in the Middle East, is about metaverse. Now, I'm not sure if you heard of this, but Dubai actually wants to change the terminology of GDP, which is gross domestic product, metaverse domestic product. Now, keeping fitness in mind, are there any plans, let's say, and this is something, which we touched base earlier in the episode as well, maybe we were discussing about fitness. Could it be possible in the next coming years, maybe 3 to 5 years down the line, that we have obstacle course race, maybe Hyrox or fitness in the metaverse? Now, this might sound a bit crazy, but what are your thoughts on having fitness-related events in the metaverse?
I think that there's always going to be a place for it. The reality is the metaverse is just that. It's it's its own universe. And anything is possible to a much larger degree in a lot of ways. And at the rate the technology is going, it's just the beginning when you're talking about getting races involved and individuals interacting on that interface, running a Spartan sprint or running a Hyrox. I guess it really chimes around how they execute on the fitness side of things. There's some incredible technologies, some of which I'm very keen to explore in terms of bringing to the region that involve, VR and augmented reality to be able to engage an individual to do things from a fit standpoint from the comfort of their own home. It's just a question of how do we ensure that sportsmanship and the overall efficacy of the product is delivered appropriately.
Absolutely. I think it's going to be crazy, just to see an avatar doing burpees in the metaverse. And I did have an interview with one of the key persons from Meta, or formerly known as Facebook, and what they actually said, that in the Meta Quest that we have, one of the leading user on board is actually in the fitness industry. They have quite a lot of events right now currently taking place in Meta Quest, which is dominated by the fitness industry. Again, I do feel that metaverse is at least, less than a decade away from mainstream adoption. So it'll definitely be cool to have some obstacle course race, maybe even Hyrox event in the metaverse. Now, Chris, next question, and this is something I'm really curious to get your response on this. Now, as someone who has seen international athletes competing in UAE for a long time, you started your Spartan Race journey all the way in Canada. Now, what do you think the athletes from the MENA region need to do in order to become world champions, let's say like Ryan Atkins, Lindsay Webster, Hunter McIntyre, and what is it that the UAE is lacking and what is it that they need to do?
So when it comes to sport in tradition, you've got to look at the elements that you've got to deal with, right? The beauty of individuals that are training in the Middle East is you've got heat that you can play with as an element to push your training factor. Elevation can be a challenge to find in the Middle East. Obviously, we have them in the Jebels, beautiful Jebel Chase. Obviously, in Hatta, I was out there. I only did 150 meters in terms of elevation on that run, and it felt like I did 1,500. But being able to incorporate elevation, hill runs into your training is going to be foundational in being able to excel. At the end of the day, if you don't entirely know how you can become that athlete, that tremendous elite category performance athlete, if you don't know, you just got to ask. And that's the beauty of SGX when it comes to the proprietary training that is Spartan Race, asking the Spartan coach on how to become a better athlete, whether it's overall endurance, if you're looking to best your time in a Spartan Ultra, or if you're just looking to be able to really get through obstacles without a fail, knowing that grip's a factor, knowing that, being able to work around animalistic movements is a factor. These are things that if you're not familiar with, you're going to be left behind, literally from the start line onwards. But if you understand, educate yourself, train in the right modalities, you're increasing your capability of being able to execute on the course, whether it's sprint, super beast, ultra, hurricane, heat trail, you name it, you can get through it.
Absolutely. And Chris, one thing which I believe Spartan Race, and I'm not sure if this is only done in the Middle East, we as athletes, we can also partake in a training program just a day before the obstacle course race, which I believe, if I'm not mistaken, is done by XCX coach, right?
That is correct. Also myself, the obstacle specialist training, or OS training, it is something that we've been looking to adopt into the region for quite some time. It just wasn't it just wasn't an opportunity in times past from a production standpoint. We were just not at the capacity to be able to offer that experience. Fortunately, going into the latter half of 2022, I was able to finally bring out our first obstacle specialist training session. We had hosted it at the World Championships. It was a bit of a last minute affair, but we did end up getting it going. We had a dozen or so individuals come out and participate. It was cool. It was unique. Again, something that I've been working towards having for many a year. And we're looking to incorporate it more into our events. There's a good chance that we'll be having it in Hutta in November. So it'd be an opportunity for individuals essentially to better their understanding on how to execute on an obstacle, being taught how to do things when it comes to the movements and things you want to look out for, maybe some tips and tricks, how to get through the twister, proper grip for monkey bar, so on and so forth. So we're able to teach individuals prior to the event, and then they can apply those very same training techniques at the event the next day and the following day in the case of the trifecta weekend.
And is this event, Chris, suited for someone who's a completely newbie, or is it suited for someone, let's say, who's competing for the elite and the age category as well?
So it is actually designed for anybody and everybody. If you're a newbie, what better way to learn than the day before the event by somebody who's educated in the obstacle race itself? If you're an advocate, a veteran, an elite looking to sharpen the skill set, what better way than to get back on the playground and bang them out before the big event?
Absolutely, 100%. And now we are towards the end of this episode. Now, what I did was, I reached out to some of the Spartan brand ambassadors, and we asked them, if they had any questions for you. And some of them, I was expecting them to be naughty, but you don't need to be worried. These are not naughty ones. So I have 3 questions. And these are questions, which are predominantly given by Spartan brand ambassadors and some of our listeners of the podcast as well. So the first question is, Chris, your celebrity crush, male and female?
My celebrity crush, male and female. I haven't been watching movies much in a long time. I would say, I got to give it up to Thor. What's his name? Chris Hemsworth. The guy's a big lug, and I'm a huge Thor fan, so I'll give him credit there where credit's due. And the ladies, I was a huge Megan Fox fan when Transformers came out. So I think I'll keep it that. Kate Beckinsale when I was really young, Jennifer Love Hewitt. I think I'll leave those 3 somewhere around there.
The second question is, if you were to have your own obstacle course race or hybrid event, what would you name it?
If I were to have my own event, Epsilon.
Epsilon. Oh, that's a really nice name. Okay.
It's something that comes from nothing.
Oh, very unique and catchy name. And the third question is, and this is going back to your passion for DJ, one of the questions that they asked is, who's your favorite DJ artist, and are you planning to have any events focusing primarily on DJ itself?
I've as we say in the game, I've hung the headphones up. It's been quite some time since I've spun any tracks or mixed any sort of sessions together. It'd be something I do in the off time when I have the off time. Recently stepped into a little bit more of an operational role with the team here in Spartan. So, favorite DJ, again, a tough one. I was a big fan of Afrojack when I was getting into it at a younger age, early 20s. It was just a great beat. Pitbull, to be honest, from a production standpoint, no one really does it better as a producer than Pitbull.
And I think recently there was an event in Abu Dhabi as well, right? Ultra Music Festival or something, if I'm not mistaken.
Indeed. It was Ultra Music Fest. Usually happened in the U.S. That is the top 5 biggest events in the U.S. for sure. So the fact that the brand had crossed the pond and come out here, I think is just the beginning. I think you'll see a lot more of these larger acts. Obviously, Middle Beast. You see some pretty big names in Riyadh come out on an annual traditional event, and I think that you're gonna start to see that more and more. I think events overall they're just gonna continue to become much more popular because they're just a great experience. Whether it is that you're just going out to see an artist or you're going out to crush a course, whatever the case may be, it becomes something that brings people together, and it becomes something that gets people to better themselves. And it becomes a getaway and experience. It's almost like plugging into the metaverse and getting away from the traditional day-to-day.
Absolutely. And one more question that we have from one of the brand ambassadors, and I'm pretty much sure of the answer that you're going to give out. Who would you consider the GOAT, male or female, of obstacle course race?
Oh, I mean, I may be Canadian and I'm playing favorite here, but Lindsay Webster and Ryan Atkins, they're phenomenal in what they do as athletes. It's how you see them as individuals and characters themselves that put them above and beyond what most athletes, or I should say most likely, what other athletes may be in terms of professionalism in the sport and sportsmanship. It's really incredible to see some of these individuals and how they act just on the day to day. Another individual actually that I personally had the chance of having some fun running around the lawn with, and is just one of the most humble human beings I've ever met. Name's skipping my mind here. Get back to me on that one. It just popped out of my head.
Is it someone from UK?
Richard Hynek.
Richard Hynek. Oh, yeah.
An incredible athlete. He would have won the Triple Crown last year. Unfortunately, he was fighting an injury on the Worlds, but he had won the European Championship. He had won the Trifecta World Championship, and just couldn't quite come out for Worlds. But he is probably one of the most humble athletes I've ever had the privilege of meeting. Young, ambitious kid with a heart of gold.
Absolutely, and I believe he smashed the course in 2019 at Hatta as well, if I'm not mistaken.
Wasn't Hatta? It was in Oman. He had come out and he had crushed the trifecta. He ran the beast in 1 hour and 26 minutes, and it was a 26-kilometer course at that time. Absolutely mind-blowing, his capabilities as an athlete, and he's young, so he's still got a lot of road ahead of him in terms of being able to really set the standard when it comes to the event. So it's great to see individuals like him. Obviously, Sergei Perelwin, we've had him in our region since I've been out here. He has only become more and more of a staple in terms of OCR and athleticism, and it was amazing to watch him cross the finish line and claim his first place finish at the Worlds this past year. I think it's a long time coming for himself, and it's amazing to see.
Absolutely, and the way he did it, and his response to that was absolutely phenomenal. So I definitely do think he's a beast, absolutely for sure. But one question, which I just thought when you mentioned about 26 kilometers, the distance for beast. Recently, Spartan is focusing more on shorter duration. Now, what are your thoughts and what is your response been from participants on the shorter duration, let's say like 3K? And I'm not sure, Chris, if you've seen recently they've announced a back-to-back lap of 5 kilometers for 5 hours. So, what are your thoughts on Spartan moving into shorter distances?
So, an athleticism standpoint, keeping in mind that the ultimate agenda, that is OCR, is to make it an Olympic sport. And the Olympics is looking for something that is more focused on obstacle course racing, as opposed to a standard race that incorporates obstacles, which is predominantly how we operate in terms of a Spartan race. So shrinking down that course, you look at some of the other bigger names in terms of obstacle course racing. You have, OCR Worlds, where they've got a heavy number of obstacles that are laid out across a 5 to 15 kilometer course, but every 100 meters is an obstacle, right? And the rule to the game that is Obstacle Worlds is that you have to complete the obstacle or you do not finish, you get a DNF. Taking that extreme consideration, then switching it over to what Spartan has done with the 5K, 20K, 5K up to 21K, in terms of traditional Spartan OCRs, it had to be, how do we kind of correlate the two? So shrinking the distance down and making it something that is more focused on the actual execution of the obstacle as opposed to the endurance required to get through the course is where the mindset is for Spartan moving into the future, obviously to really kind of parallel with the expectation of the Olympic Committee so that we can really introduce it to the world through the Olympics and start tapping into a much broader demographic. So I think it's a great transition. I personally am a huge fan of it simply because if you were to look at my running as opposed to my obstacle execution, I'm definitely stronger on the obstacles, at least the ones that we have. But it is about finding the balance and remembering that if you're an athlete that's right now, if your game is all run, congratulations, we just dropped the burpee and it's a penalty for runners. So it's going to be easier for you to keep up in terms of your overall podium position. But obstacles themselves, the challenge of learning how to execute at a much faster rate, at a much more efficient rate, is what makes you an overall better athlete. And You can look at some of the best athletes that do this, and they'll tell you, if you keep that game sharp in terms of obstacle execution, you will be a force to be reckoned with in terms of Spartan Race and so on.
Absolutely. And what Spartan Race has done in their defense is, once they have reduced the shorter distance for Spartan Race, Tough Mudder is now under the Spartan umbrella. So they've increased the distance for Tough Mudder from 5K to 10K. Now it is 5K and 15K. There is always an option to do longer distance course as well. Now the next question is, again, a bit of a fun question. What is your favorite music genre?
I mean, it's matured over the years. I'm almost into just passive classical at times, but it really depends on the mood. It depends on what I'm doing, what I'm looking to accomplish, and what I want to kind of invigorate that mood or enhance that feel. At the end of the day, I've always been a fan of percussion. I was a drummer at one point in time when I was younger, and I think that's what got me into dropping the beat, because that's what it's all about, finding the beat. And I feel that's inherent through everything I do. Everything's kind of to the beat of life. And so if it's got a beat, it's got me on my feet. Let's put it that way.
That's absolutely brilliant way of saying it. And I'm not sure, Chris, but I play drums as well. But I play drums for extreme music. And there are a couple of bands from Canada called as Cryptopsy. And, if you check out the drummer, he's absolutely insane. He's kind of like the Ryan Atkins of drums. So thank you so very much, Chris, for doing this. Really, really appreciate the fact that, you've taken it down from a busy schedule. Any fun words you want to tell our listeners, and how can listeners or the business partners and sponsors can get in touch with you?
So you guys can obviously reach out to us any point in time. Spartan Arabia on the Instagram is always the favorite to go to. Links in the bio to register for anything we're offering at the time that we're offering it. And the same thing we go with Hyrox. Hyrox ME is how to reach us. Links in the bio for the events that are soon to come. I'm feeling like Dubai is that first one. We're so close. It's coming. More information will be coming. So if you're not following us there, definitely follow us there. But guys, if I could leave you with one thing, it is just remember that anything and everything you do is an experience, right? It's just, what do you want to do? You want to experience something or not? You choose to experience something. Anything that you do, whether it's an OCR, whether it's a Hyrox event, it is going to be something that's going to challenge you. Challenge is where the growth comes from. And growth is what it's all about. So go grow, have some fun, and we'll see you at Starlight.
That is absolutely brilliant way of saying it. Thank you so very much, Chris, for doing this. And what I'll do is, for our listeners, all of your details, the details for Spartan Arabia, Spartan Trail events, Hyrox, everything will be in the show notes below. And, thank you once again for doing this. Really, really appreciate you taking the time and doing this, Chris.
Absolutely my pleasure, man. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much, Chris. Have a nice one.